I think that can explain easily why the Earth has the carbon dating that it's got.
You know what doesn't have the carbon dating?
What's that?
This podcast, but it is reaching 1 year anniversary, which is next week on the calendar.
I thought it was the end of February.
Nope, it's next week.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
That's when we created the account. I think I'll have to look at when our first episode went up on Facebook, but the account was made about a year ago because it was once part of our password. The date we made it.
So, are we rolling?
We are, actually. Welcome back to the Exchange Podcast.
Is your host, Tom Paul Tipton, doing what I love to do. And I don't know if you noticed, but there was a couple of interesting articles out of the Daily Caller this week. One of them was voting firm stored election data in China. Whistleblower alleges. Did you see that?
You know, I try not to get into, the drama of the good old days in high school of the he said, she said. But then I realized Bowling for Soup was correct. High school really doesn't end. Everybody talks about everything and everybody alleges this, everybody alleges that. But it wouldn't surprise me, Thomas.
Well, so I got to looking at this. It says a December whistleblower complaint alleges that election software firm Connect stored poll workers' private data in China, according to documents obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office suspended an investigation into Connect founder Eugene Yu in November. Our office has an ongoing obligation to continually reassess the case in light of all the available evidence, the District Attorney's Office said in a statement to DCNF. A Michigan-based election infrastructure firm stored poll workers' private data in China. A new whistleblower complaint obtained by Daily Caller News Foundation says matching earlier allegations against the company and CEO Eugene Yu. It says Grant Bradley, a former employee at Connect, a software firm that provides logistics for poll stations at 32 locations across the U.S., also said that the company's developers, designers, and coders are all Chinese national based out of, drumroll please, Wuhan.
Oh, Wuhan.
That name sounds familiar.
It's getting to the point where, let's just be honest, it's all about money. Who's giving me more money? Listen, I don't care what anyone says. And Thomas, you may be a better man than me, but I'm willing to bet money that there is a price for everything. There's a price for everyone, because there was a time when I was in high school, and you guys can use your imagination what the conversations in the locker room was like, but it'd be occasionally, how much money would it take for you to kiss your bro? And it's like, listen, everyone had a price at one point, okay? That's what I learned early in high school. Some people said, hey, it'd take $50. Some people said it'd take $1 million. But you want to know something, Thomas? There was a number and a dollar sign greater than zero. Everyone's got a price. And what's happening in Wuhan, what's happening here in the States, if anything, all it is just who's got the most money.
Well, I think it's interesting, Wuhan. I have a friend who runs a missions organization, and he goes over. Most of his work is done in China, and
can't trust him then.
And one of the things he said is that Wuhan is actually like I guess for lack of better words, it's a capital for Christianity in China. There's I think it's like the largest concentrated city of Christians, and it's huge. So the point being is this: there's a lot that surrounds that town. But when I read this about them storing, but see, the article goes on to say something more than that. It says that there were people's social security card numbers, different pieces of very sensitive information that was being stored in this in this area at Wuhan, at this poll in Wuhan. I want to know why there is a voting poll watcher in Wuhan, China.
in a different country.
I mean, why is that? Why is that happening?
Well, because because 300 million people is a lot of people, and so we have to do the technology of these voting stations, and that's where everything gets really finicky. Were elections fair before? Okay, no.
Well, it's always been
elections have always had some type of bull,
right?
Malarkey, as our president would say, and I would venture to say that this isn't new. It's kind of like what we talked about last week. Nothing new under the sun, right? Everything that has to do with voting has been tampered with some way, somehow. So I'm not surprised that this is happening.
Yeah.
But I think the answer to all of this is that, look, it's going to get muddied.
Yeah.
And we just kind of have to accept
Right.
a little bit of that muddy water. But when it's absolutely just tar in the water, and it's just crap like this, because I look at this and I think there's no reason for our elections to have any affiliation with any other country, even if there are, even if like it's Canada or Mexico, especially Mexico and Canada. But the thing is, it shouldn't be in China of all places.
Well,
it's a place that doesn't even like us. That formally just says, hey, Taiwan is ours, and if you have anything else to say about it, we're coming for you next. And it's like I don't see why we have any type of affiliation with our voting system there.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, it goes back to the 2016 election when they were talking about constant Russian collusion. This is Chinese collusion. And I say this because, look, this can be tied in biblically. The Bible tells us that when a nation walks away from God, that your enemies, one of the promises that he gives to the children of Israel when they're going into the promised land is he says, when you go in there, you're going to live in houses you didn't build. You're going to glean from fields you didn't plant and vineyards you didn't plant. But the flip side of that is that if Israel walked away from God, that their enemies would do the exact same thing. And we look at how much farmland that China is buying up in this country. So she is from down in South America, and we were talking, and she said that her country actually had like this huge wave of conservatism in their voting. And they have been making laws to push these same Chinese government and interest groups out of their country, because what they were doing is they were going in on these coastal areas and they were literally buying up huge areas of the coast and fishing off of it and sending all the food back to China and then charging the people of this country a lot of money. Yeah. And that's what we're looking at here. And so, I'm going, why? I mean, I think really the key of this article is that the company Connect, I think is how you say it, Konneck.
Yeah.
I believe that's Connect is how you say that.
Hey, if they're using our characters, I'm going to call it whatever I want.
So I think that's really what a lot of this is coming down to, is just how much they have infiltrated, even more so than Russia. They have infiltrated really to the fiber of our nation.
Sure. You know what the fun part about this is, the gaslighting that leads up to this, to the apathy of another country doing what they do. The gaslighting is, oh, well, you're just a racist. You're this and that. You're this and that. And then when people actually buy into that you're a racist, that you hate people. And so when you say, I don't like it when the Chinese government's here, people try to equate you saying you hate the Chinese government to, I hate Chinese people. Yeah. And therefore, when you say, no, I don't want the Chinese government here, they're just going to say, oh, well, I know he's a racist. So what he really means is he's a racist. And so the funny thing is that I don't care if you look just like me. Let me put it this way. This is a good example. If one of my siblings became a Chinese nationalist tomorrow, and they came to my house and wanted
which you can do,
and they wanted to come to my house and try to subscribe me to the Chinese manifesto, I would tell him as a warning, because he is blood, you get 5 minutes to leave my home.
Right.
After that, I never want to see you again.
Yeah.
Not because I hate him.
No.
But you can't come over to my house and try to espouse things, especially my country, and try to give reasons why we should be letting this party of absolute terror squads
Right.
running through their own country,
Right.
rounding people up, locking them in their own homes.
Yeah.
And again, none of my brothers would do that. I had actually a funny conversation with my younger brother, Titus. He said, he said it jokingly. He was like, no, listen, I'm like 100% nationalist, okay? Nothing's better than this country. You know, we were just joking. There's nothing wrong with being nationalistic.
No.
But, you know, I sit here and I think you cannot equate someone saying, I don't want another government taking over to racism.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. And that's what I'm getting at. This whole debacle with voting. Look, it sounds depressing, everybody, but listen, you guys need to know it. You guys need to hear it. And these are just alleging conversations. It's not like we're saying it actually happened. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Why is their company doing this? Because I think one of the best things that ever happened to me was realizing that God isn't a terrible parent, and you can ask why. And therefore, us as believers should be asking why, not only of other people, but of the governing bodies that are above us.
Yeah, and let me kind of jump in there. It's not a racist thing to simply go, hey, you know, why is this company doing this? Because voting is it's our most basic right, or it's not our most basic, but it is one of our most precious rights.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That
sacred
because we have that ability to say our government governs by the consent of the governed. And so the moment that we have any kind of outside influence coming in from another country, from another entity, that can start war.
Yeah.
That can start war. So it is important to us to ask, why is this country or any other country doing what they're doing? It has nothing to do with racism. Why are they doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
You know, so no, as you know, and another question that people want to say is, well, Jesus didn't get that involved in politics. Yeah, he did. What do you think the Sadducees and Pharisees were? The Sadducees, best way I can explain it is your Sadducees would have been closest to the Democrat Party, Pharisees to the Republican Party. I'm not saying that the Pharisees were good, because they weren't, but the Sadducees were a side of people that on the physical side of things. First off, they didn't believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in angels. On the physical side of things, they were a group of people that wanted to politically go along to get along with the Romans.
Sure.
Right? And so the Pharisees were people that wanted civil disobedience, but some of their civil disobedience Jesus called into check, because he said, when they handed him, who should we pay homage to? He says, well, hand me that denarius. He says, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, render unto God's what is God's. So Jesus did get involved with the politics of his culture. We should be involved in the politics of our culture. And when something like this comes up, we want answers.
The bare minimum of being involved in politics is just asking questions.
Yeah.
And it's when people try to make you think that you asking questions is a bad thing. That's when you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong. For instance, I remember there were so many times in college when an allegation of, and we're on YouTube, so I can't say certain things. When allegations of bad no touch things would happen to somebody.
Yeah.
Asking questions made you almost as bad as the person who did the act, because you're not supposed to question. And this was back in 2014, 2015. And you would see it. You would watch it on different college campuses. You would watch it. And so there is a generation of people my age and some younger who are terrified to ask why the mob is being in the mob. Now, there's a younger generation than that who says, I don't care what the mob's doing. Why are they burning everything down?
Right.
And that's good. You know, there are people like me, people like Thomas, people like a lot of in my friend group who are willing to ask the question, why are you acting like this? Because, it's like I was talking to my wife last night. Something happened at her work, and we're not going to go into too big details, but somebody got fired. And said person said, well, I have kids. And, a good question is, well, if you had kids, how did we get here? How did we get to the point of you getting fired? And I guarantee you, if you were to ask that question to said person, because I've met people like that, they would be so offended that you're asking that because they think, well, you're questioning my intelligence. You're right, I am. Because, my wife and I, we have kids. I'm not going to be able to look them in the eye and say, I didn't want to go to work because I just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I didn't put in the hard work at work to get paid when I'm getting paid because I didn't feel like it.
Yep.
Okay? Because that's kind of how things are. No, you should be able to question things. And I think that's my issue with this. But I have a question for you, Thomas.
Sure.
Everybody who's listening, you all have heard of TikTok, YouTube, any type of social media. So you've probably heard of the show called Bluey.
Yeah.
You heard of that?
Yeah.
Have you ever watched that? I know you have a young niece that probably watches television like that. But does she watch that? Have you ever been around when she watches it? If
she might, yeah.
Yeah. I have watched clips of this show, and Thomas, it is amazing.
Like in a good way or bad?
In a good way.
Why's that? What is it?
It's this Australian show about this blue dog with a blue dad dog and a cream colored mom dog. And they have these moments where it's real. So for instance, you and I both know that most television from America, like Disney Plus or all that stuff, they don't have a competent dad in the home.
Yeah.
In Bluey, you've got this dad who, "Oi, mate, I need you to go clean this up." "But I don't want to clean it up." I didn't ask you if you wanted to. You got to go clean it up. And then I'm doing my best as an Australian accent, but that's how the show is. And I sit there and I go, "Oh my gosh, it's a kids television show."
Yeah.
That is good. And you want to know how I know it's good? People my age are watching it and going, "Oh my gosh, the parents are so great." They're getting emotionally attached to it. That's where I think it's dumb. And I'm starting to realize, oh, you want to know something? The reason you're emotionally getting attached to this is because you've been lacking this in your life. You want this. You desire this. The reason Bluey is so popular is because it's not a kid's show looking at the kid's perspective. Yeah. It's the kids show telling them these are parents,
right?
With real. For instance, there's a couple of characters who can't have children. Thomas, never in my life have I ever seen a kids show aimed at 5 to 8 year olds talk about miscarriages.
Yeah,
and
interesting,
and it's real. It's hey, well, why don't they have kids? And the parents are doing their best to teach these little dogs, puppies. Right.
Where's this show based out of?
Australia.
Okay.
The very creepy socialist place of, internment camps. But the thing is, I watched the show and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a breath of fresh air. My question is, what do you think of that type of television? And, how do you see that why would you think a show like that would be popular for all ages? Because I think it's great. I honestly give it a 7 out of 10.
I think a couple of reasons. One, I won't say they're all bad. I think, maybe one reason, you've already pointed it out. It's that they're finding something they've been lacking, something they've been wanting, both parents in the home, typical home. Also, too, there's a psychological thing to that. People are simply not buying into you are who you identify as.
Right.
They want to. And the government desperately needs them to.
Right.
Now, when I say government, I'm not talking about just the United States or other countries. I'm talking about what's coming to be known as a global government. Powers that be is a better word. They desperately need them to, because the bottom line is you've got to convince people that all of the institutions that we have known and respected are wrong. They're bad. They're failures. That's the reason why that as Christians, it is so imperative for us to hold a standard, stick to principles. I'm not saying if you mess up that you're done. I'm saying if you mess up, admit to it, and let's move on, because they are trying to undermine law enforcement. They're trying to undermine government. They're trying to undermine the church, every institution.
The family.
That's where I was going, because the family is the bedrock of all these institutions.
Yeah.
So they're trying to underestimate these institutions, so that what happens is the powers that be, we'll call them that, which, by the way, met just here last week. They're meeting the World Economic Forum.
Yep.
All the elites, all the people like the Al Gores who
He
listen to
invented
me.
the internet.
Listen to me. I've been to Al Gore's house in Tennessee. Okay, do not believe. I will say this: he's got a bunch of solar panels all over the place, but do not believe that he is not financially benefiting from all of this stuff he's espousing about
Right.
global warming. Again, that's something they need us to believe. They need us to be fearful of weather. All we have to do is study history. We can look at the Earth, however old it is, and understand that weather happens all the time. And so what happens, though, going back to the question, the positive reason is because people, it affirms what the church has said, and that is you can't mess with what God has said is true. The negative side of that is that we live in a society that is very unserious.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how. I think that's what caught me off guard, because it's a kids show. It's colorful. It's animated. It's talking dogs.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of talking dog, you think of Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
And goofiness like that. Goofy from
Right.
Disney. But you know, it is serious. You know, I've never seen a show where I kind of got, you know, I was feeling bad for anthropomorphic dogs having a miscarriage. But obviously I can equate that to people who have miscarriages and the sadness in that. And I think to myself, man, that, you know, that is a good message.
Yeah.
And if I was sitting watching this with my kids, I would say
Good conversation starter.
good conversation starter. Here's why that's a good conversation starter, because even when I was a kid and there were things, I specifically remember watching the good old day shows on like Nick Jr. and the Disney shows that were just like trying to teach you lessons.
Yeah.
I remember asking my mom sometimes, you know, like, what does this mean?
Sure.
And my mom would, to the best of her abilities.
I don't know as I would want to watch, you know, the miscarriage episode.
No,
Because then that leads to another question that maybe 5 or 6 they don't know and don't need to know.
Well, and you know, kids, I've learned, are good at asking that question and then you answering it in a way to where it marinates for years, and then they can come back to it.
Right.
For instance, that episode talking about like miscarriages, it's not just miscarriage, it's about being barren.
Sure.
Too. And so it's like, well, why don't they have kids? And then you as a parent can say, well, you know, sometimes God doesn't allow people to have kids.
Yeah.
And again, being a Christian, that's how I would answer it in a similar way like that. And then when my kid gets older, I tell them the science behind it and how, like, well, you know, like sometimes God designs certain people's bodies to not have kids or not to do this.
Yeah.
You know, just have because that's what a good kid show points back to the parents and says, it's your job now to give the answer to this. Not oh geez, you know, I hate to sound like everybody in Florida, but the teacher's job and the kids show's job isn't to say, hey, you're probably gay.
Yeah.
Don't tell your parents.
Right.
Don't tell your parents, because
Right.
you know there's a bunch of cases out right now of teachers getting in trouble because don't tell your parents. No. You should tell them to come talk to me.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's a thing that should be happening.
You have no business talking to my kid about anything of that nature and then telling my kid, don't talk to your parents. You know, I was always told as a kid, if someone does something inappropriate, go tell your parents. Unless it's your parents, you know, I mean, there are those cases too.
Right.
But you always tell a responsible adult.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, again, that is I know there's one word we don't like to use on here, so I'm trying to find my way around it. But, you know, that is another way of psychologically training someone. Don't trust the family.
Yeah.
Right. And speaking of, because we've kind of talked about this, you know, there's a few institutions that I'm good with getting rid of. You know, they're taking up a vote to
The ATF.
get the 80. No, well, the 80, I didn't know about that one, but the 87,000. The 87. Hello, Sarah. The 87,000 IRS agents that they're trying to expunge and get rid of, and I'm all for that.
Oh yeah. My wife just walked in. I wanted to point out that I blurted out the ATF because I am no stranger to hating the ATF. I know hating is a strong word, and
I don't see their purpose.
Can lead to very sinful things that could happen.
Yeah.
Trust me, everybody. I pray for my hatred to go away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this thorn in my side.
Sure.
It's called Waco, Texas. But
there was a lot of things fell apart there.
But listen, the IRS vote is great because you would have to be so smooth-brained to tell me that you want to pay more taxes. Anybody, all right? I don't care if you're a black, trans, lesbian bear.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't like paying taxes. You know why? Because you get your paycheck back and you roll your eyes so hard because those taxes are going to something like 87,000 people who aren't going to be doing anything but, hey, we want more money. You're joking. You're joking. You're gonna if anyone argues for that, I question your sanity.
Yeah, and I'd like to segue into something else that we kind of, as you said, why do you want to pay more taxes? I mean, and I'm all for let's get rid of the FBI. I'm all for let's get rid of the ATF.
FBI was made
the
because it's racist.
CIA kind of has an argument why they need to stay. Only because they're supposed to be dealing offshores.
Wait,
okay?
Wasn't it CIA though who came up with the idea of false flags?
Absolutely.
So I mean, okay.
No. I'm saying if we're going to keep any of the Alphabet Club, we revamp the CIA.
Okay, revamping the CIA maybe, but here's my issue with all of them. The FBI was made because of absolute just degenerate racism.
Sure.
Keeping an eye on the Black Panthers. When listen,
it was an internal thing. You're right.
Say what you want. The Black Panthers, did some bad things, but here's my issue. Here's my issue. They had every right to stand with their guns and watch a police officer who, during that time, were doing unfair treatment to other black communities. So they have every right to look at their government with their guns and say, piss off.
Well, at the same time, the same outcome came of them that came of the Klan.
Right, exactly. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I find it funny we got a black guy and a white guy arguing over it, but no, the Klan's evil as the day is. But their whole argument was that, and I'm not saying this is even what they wanted to do, but their whole argument is that they wanted to keep the carpetbaggers and the federal government from coming in.
Right, but okay, so here's my issue. Here's my thing. Klansmen, whether people want to say, oh, well, what were the intentions? Listen, the Panthers' intentions were to feed school children breakfast, help the single mother get to work safely, and their intentions were, we're going to build our community up.
Sure.
The FBI was created to say, to heck with your community.
Yeah.
We don't want black people to do better for themselves.
Yeah. And again, I mean, because see, they're always going to have, the whole argument, the whole defense of why we had the FBI makes sense. And that was, at the time, you've got prohibition, which was a horrible law. And so, you've got, Babyface Nelson and, all these guys who are running across state lines, and the police departments weren't able to communicate that properly. And some of the police departments, like sheriffs and them, were in the back pocket of these guys. So the excuse was, well, we're going to have this so that there's oversight, and if one of these guys cross state lines, we nail them. But again, a lot of this stuff was started because even though it wasn't called civil rights at the time, that movement was starting.
Yeah.
And they were there to squelch it.
They wanted to kill it.
And I would say the Klan was pretty close to that same thing.
Right. And so the FBI, that's my issue with the FBI. The ATF, stop touching my guns. And the CIA needs, we could say everything needs to be revamped. I say erase it and let us come up with our own system, because with all the technology we have, we don't need those governing bodies anymore. We can communicate really well with each other internally now. We don't need another governing body, a third party to take care of us. And I think that's what they're afraid of, is that we have the technology.
That's it. I mean, the average police department has the same technology the FBI looks at.
The FBI. So, the Maumelle Police Department can contact the Los Angeles Police Department and say, hey, we have this guy here from your department. Like, it's no longer does one governing body have to do anything. And so FBI, racist, ATF, go away. And the CIA, when you come up with your own terroristic plots on your own people, that does not sit well with me.
Now, is this a Matt Gaetz thing? Is he the one that's really pushing to?
Matt Gaetz is doing the ATF, or at least that's what I read. He's going after the ATF.
I know Congress has taken up a vote, or they did take up a vote. Well, it was to defund the 87,000 IRS.
Yeah, IRS is a scam.
And then there was one who I think proposed, it may have been Matt Gaetz, to get rid of the IRS.
Sure.
That's not going to happen, especially in this political environment, because once it gets to the Senate, that's dead.
Yeah.
Why? Because the IRS
funds a lot of
their free money collectors. However, what it does do is it puts the people who want the IRS, and I'm not going to say Democrat or Republican,
no, it's
because
both their money.
sides want it.
Establishment.
They have to argue why they want it.
Yeah.
And then make their case the necessity of it, which there isn't either.
Goes back to that questioning, everybody. All right. Did he really off himself in prison? No. Does the Republican Party have just as much money coming from the IRS as much as the Democrats do? Yes, because maybe one or two Republicans are taking the money, but that just means there's a lot more money for those two Republicans, okay? They're taking a lot of money, and they just like that money. So here's what I'm going to just, Javaugh's not going to get in his, I'm not going to get deep into my conspiracy stuff. I'd love to have my mom on with me, so me and my mom for fun would watch those things when I was growing up. Law and Order.
I actually watched one this morning. It was on UFOs.
Oh man, you listen. The I want to have a conspiracy episode. I want to bring in I want to bring in Zach. Come in and we'll just go around the table talking about what is your favorite conspiracy theory that you truly believe. Is actually a thing. And look up Operation Northwoods. That was already declassified. Everybody would love to see that one. But I just have to say that, guys, you got to stop trusting other people to take care of you. Right? One of my favorite quotes, I can't even remember who said it, but I see it so many times on the internet. It could be fake. It might not even be a quote, but it's still true. No one's coming to save you. You have to be your own hero in terms of, and I'm not talking about your salvation. You and I both know there's a hero out there. It's Jesus Christ. We know that. But when it comes to, all right, in reality of what's happening here and now, Jesus is going to come save us.
Yeah.
But you still have to do your own stuff. Jesus doesn't make you dependent on anyone.
Well, the term first responder came out of the Carter administration. There wasn't that police, paramedics, firemen, they were not known as first responders until Jimmy Carter. Again, that was a word that was implemented by a left wing government in order to get people to realize, we got to depend on government.
We got to depend on...
Because first responders were those people who adhered to the Second Amendment and had guns, and if someone's breaking into your house, as the old saying goes, and I've said it here before, I'll say it again, when seconds count, the police are minutes away.
There was a deputy so I work for the county. I work on cars, all sorts of vehicles, bigger rigs, deputy vehicles, all that type of stuff. And in there, I was working on it, having a good time. And I was asking a deputy, and I said, hey, just moved out into the county. If someone's breaking into my house, what should I do? Here's what the answer is in California. Call the police. This is from
Probably not in Arkansas.
This is from a deputy. I'm not going to give their name out, just in case somebody's like, oh, this is uncalled for. But this deputy, they said, well, you got to defend yourself. So, I hope you have something. Because the reality is he knows he might be on the other side of the county. And Pulaski County's huge, everybody.
Yeah.
So, he may be stuck behind traffic before he gets to my house.
He's
And
probably sitting there on a desk with his boots propped up.
Yeah.
So you got
here's
to
the thing.
defend yourself.
I'm going to tell you what the police are, okay? They're a cleanup crew. They are not.
Hey, look, I love it.
Look, I love our police officers.
Yeah.
In terms of like the ones I know. Okay, but they're not here to kick the door in as soon. Those movies that you saw in the 80s with the awesome cops doing the awesome things? Guys, that's Hollywood.
Yeah.
It never happens, all right? When I was a police officer, I think the only time I ever had to run after somebody was some teenager because his mom said he was missing. And, I just wanted to be a helpful, if anything, citizen to help a mom find her son.
Yeah.
All right? No one's kicking your door in, and then the police jump out of the bush and say, we got you now.
Well, they don't have enough manpower to, sit at your house all day.
Here's your best option, he said. Do you have a Remington 870? Because that'll be your 911. It'll be 911. What's your emergency? I just shot a man who was breaking into my home.
Nobody got a Smith and his best friend Wesson.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to need you guys to send an ambulance because he's convulsing, and I'm going to have to clean this blood up eventually. So.
Well, and that's it. See, so it's like now we want to militarize the police and we want to make it federal.
That is insane.
But there's a third story I wanted to get to today, and
we've been having a lot of fun. Jumping around, talking about cartoon dogs.
Aguilera Maderos.
I'm going to need you to send me that name because I think you.
I think I butchered it.
I was about to say.
I think I butchered it. What's that name?
Let me see. He's handing me the phone. Rogel Aguera Maderos. I could be saying it wrong too.
That's Arguella
Maderos.
Okay.
Well,
Arguella Maderos. Okay.
Hey, listen. I'm not.
I know that because
we need a Spanish speaker on the show, just for those moments. We'll call him up. All right.
Don't send me a name. I'll butcher it.
We'll say, hey, Jonathan, get over here. And look what I did. I didn't use a stereotypical Hispanic name.
If you have soft feelings, I will butcher a name. Do not ask me to pronounce it. So anyway.
Pronounced Nigeria.
What is? Yeah, we'll stay away from that. At least I will stay away from that one. So a truck driver who was sentenced to 110 years in prison for a fatal accident in Colorado has been resentenced. They've knocked off 100 years and resentenced him to 10 years after an outcry from family and advocates. Governor Jared Polis announced the commutation. Sorry, there I go again. Of Madero's sentence on Thursday. Truck driver sentenced to 110 years in Colorado wreck that killed 4. Now, guess what? Here, listen. Said his brakes were not working before his big rig slammed into stopped traffic on a highway, causing vehicles to burst into flames. He got 110 years for that. That happened back in 2019. I remember when that happened.
So what's the issue? He's supposed to inspect it.
Well, here's the issue.
Okay.
He initially got 110 years.
Sure.
Which I thought was
excessive.
Yeah, there has to be something paid here, right? But 110 years was excessive. So they've knocked it down to 10 years, which he'll probably serve 3 and then out and then on probation, more than likely. Point being is this. I'm driving down the road yesterday and I see this big truck and it's got metal, it's a flatbed with metal gates around it. And there's this two-wheeler and it's just bouncing back and forth. And it's connected somehow to the flatbed, but I mean, it's radically bouncing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, if that thing falls back, I would have secured that a little bit better, because if that thing falls out and it hits a car or causes a wreck, he's going to prison. And he should.
Well,
Why?
that's-
Because
yeah.
of negligence.
Yeah, that's his job.
But there's so many people who are just, well, Alec Baldwin shouldn't go to prison.
Oh, this is where you're going to. I was stunned. He got me. He got me.
Yeah.
All right, that's a twist.
So,
That's a twist. Okay, continue.
Alec Baldwin is looking at a possible 12 years in prison.
I think that is the max for manslaughter.
I think he should get it.
I think he should get it.
Now, again, he'd probably be out in 3. And here's why I think he should get it. Because, number one, when you read the story of what happened on Rust, he had been continuous. There had been this continuous, hey, unsafe work environment. Hey, there's shots being fired. Hey, that gun has live rounds in it. It was continuously ignored. People say, well, but it wasn't his fault. Maybe not his fault, but his responsibility.
You want to know when it's not his fault? He gets pushed accidentally, and he's holding the gun.
Yeah.
And
Which, again, he shouldn't have been pointing at someone else.
Right. He gets pushed. He's holding the gun. Knee-jerk reaction. He squeezes his hands because he's going to brace for himself. He points it in a direction, shoots it. It kills somebody. That's not his fault. Still.
Well, there is okay, for instance, on the I read on the set of the movie Young Guns that was done back in the 90s, I think it was, late 80s. They will use live rounds, especially when they want a barrel flash, a muzzle flash rather, because blanks will not give that to you. So you've got to use live rounds. But they would point these towards where the camera angle could get it and get the muzzle flash, but it was never pointed at a person, obviously. But what was happening is I think there was like 2 incidents, all within the same scene, where there was, I think, a ricochet or something. But neither one of these people were killed. It was due to, it was very much the John Kerry thing where he got the Purple Heart because he shot at Iraq in Vietnam. And there was a ricochet and he got shot and then they wrote him up for a Purple Heart and he got one. He was thrice Purple Hearted. And, but it was kind of that same story. But Alec Baldwin is the producer of this.
He's in charge.
He's in charge. Someone needs to answer.
Yeah, people don't know this, but, when you see director, everybody thinks, oh, he must be in charge of the entire movie. It's the producer. The producer is the one who finally gets to say, like, we're doing this, we're doing that. I don't want him to have this makeup. I want him to have that makeup, that type of stuff. So to give people an idea of how important it is for him to know what's going on set, he would still be responsible somewhat if another actor shot and killed someone, because it's the producer would be liable, and whatever studio that hired him as the producer is responsible. Therefore, it's so important that he knows what's going on his set, that anyone under him and above him can be held liable because he's the producer. So it's for him to do this,
right?
And people want to argue that, well, it's not his fault. Oh my gosh, you see it all the time. When I was growing up, and I'm fine with talking about this. I love my grandmother. Mm-hmm. I could get away with murder with her because she's a grandma. Okay, like everybody knows what a grandmother is supposed to do. A grandmother's supposed to just
talk your parents out of whipping your tail.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you really deserve it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people are raised by nowadays.
Yeah.
They're raised by the grandmother mentality, gentle parenting.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people say that nowadays. I'm trying to do gentle parenting. All right, good. I'm glad you're not yelling at your kid every other minute. That's not good.
Right.
However, when little Jimmy comes home and he just hit a baseball, the baseball you told him not to hit in the neighborhood, through somebody's window, that gentle is out the window, just like the ball, and the parenting needs to be vamped up.
Well, Jimmy runs out in the road and gets hit.
Oh, it wasn't your fault, Jimmy.
Yeah, running out there and saying, "Oh, Jimmy, it'll be okay. It'll be okay." No. It's not going to be okay. The kid's probably dead.
My kid is dumb.
Yeah. I mean,
I told my kid multiple times, and he still got himself.
I got a kid who keeps running out in the highway or keeps trying to stick a key in the light socket. I'm probably going to dust his tail.
Dude, it's so, it is sad. I'm sure parents have lost kids because their kid wasn't listening to them. I'm sure it happens.
But again, do you know, of course, I work in the electric industry, so I kind of know this. Do you know that a parent can actually be held? Now, if they're living in a house outside, okay, say for instance, okay, Little Rock's in Pulaski.
Yeah.
So the codes in Pulaski are a lot different than they are in surrounding areas. One of the codes is that you have to get a what are those called? But they're proofed against a kid being able to stick a key inside the socket.
Oh yeah, I know. So like a certain cover,
Yeah.
like it's like it's not like those little inserts.
No, they're
you
not
put
covers.
in.
They're not covers. So when you stick a plug into
You have
the
to put
socket,
a certain amount of force, right?
it's the shape. So it's like it only recognizes that shape.
Oh, it's like a smart cover.
Yeah, so a kid tries to stick a fork, tries to stick a spoon, it's not going. It's not going, which is smart. You can live in some counties where if you don't go and revamp your house, maybe this could be argued as socialism. But knowing that could happen, I'm going to go and replace those in my house.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't agree with the government telling you what kind of sockets you need in your house.
I would say the government comes up with codes for your house to have.
Yeah.
So I would say that it would be applicable for them to say, hey, by code, you need to have these type of sockets.
And I think that's a good question. I think
because by code, you have to have certain type of wood, you have to have certain type of measurements, and you have to be leveled at a certain.
Well, the first code that was ever implemented, federal code that was ever implemented, was implemented shortly after the Industrial Age, which was like right after the Civil War. Before the Civil War.
I knew that was a mistake, the Industrial Age.
So, I mean, the question would come down to, okay, is it socialism or is it because of progress that we have to have these codes?
It's progress.
I think so.
It's progress because the more you unlock things. So, for instance, a good example of this is in video games. In the Pokemon video games, you get to a certain level and you realize, oh, I can't beat this person.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back. I need to revamp what I have and get it up to code, if you will, so that when I go against them, I can beat them. And then you go to the next level. And you realize, oh, that last thing I had was obsolete.
Right.
I need to revamp it. And to keep things safe, I mean, that's where governing bodies are okay because a lot of times you need committees to go, listen, this is a committee of experts, for instance.
Yeah.
A committee of engineers should not be telling a music studio, unless they're music engineers, but let's say they're like social engineers, shouldn't be telling a music studio what type of music they could put out. But that social engineer could say, all right, so we're going to need to put this in the park because kids are playing on this jungle gym. I think we should implement every park have a first aid station for first responders to use, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They could do that because they understand the statistics and all that. And that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with the government saying, hey, because we've had a huge jump in child deaths because of electrical sockets, there's a new invention out. You can buy whichever one you want because obviously that's where the capitalism comes in.
Sure.
Like, let's say 10 companies come up with the same device and different prices and all that, and it's like, hey, we're not going to tell you which one to buy, but to make sure your house is up to code, and if you don't get it, you're liable.
Well, let's look at, and we'll probably go over just a few minutes today, but not long. Let's look at, we're being told by this administration that they want every American on an electric car by 2030.
Yeah,
they want all combustible engines off the road.
Yeah, that's not cool.
It's not cool for a couple of reasons. Number one, they just found sensitive documents in Obama's garage, which is a big story. But there's another story here too. You know where they found them?
Next to his diesel engine vehicle.
1960 Corvette. That's not going to
I was joking.
It was a 1960 electric or a 1960 Corvette. Okay, I don't care that the guy's got the car. What I am a little upset is with laws for thee, but not for me.
Oh, man, that's funny.
He's not going to get rid of that in 2030. Hunter Biden's not going to get rid of that in 1930. They're going to drive it. While the rest of us have all got to be charging our car for 24 hours before we can leave on a 3-day trip. And so, my point being is, I I get why codes are there, and I'm not saying that codes shouldn't be adhered to. But one of the reasons why Alec Baldwin is looking into down the barrel of a long sentence term or prison sentence is because
Down the barrel.
Yeah, wrong choice of words there. Why he's looking at the business end of a long prison sentence is because there were codes set in place. And this is a guy who wants to browbeat anybody who believes in the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
He believes in bigger government until bigger government affects him.
Oh, yeah. No, dude. Those codes, those rules and regulations about firearms isn't just in Hollywood. When I was in high school and college, I did a few shows like Hello Dolly and West Side Story and oh my gosh, what was the other one? Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Peter Pan has pirates in it. Well, pirates have guns.
Yeah.
These are wooden guns, right? Like, these are faker than fake, right? The professional backstage men and women who did all of our stuff
Yeah.
were very adamant to us. Hey, we know it's fake, but you will start getting into the understanding that this is a loaded gun.
Yeah.
Even if it's fake.
Right.
You will treat it like it's a... They said if you point it at anyone, we will let your director know, and because we're in high school, you know, you can get written up and stuff. We will let your director know, and we will highly recommend you get kicked off of the show.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where it's taught to children who
Yeah.
are in the acting. You know, if kids are looking into getting into acting, 5 years old up to 99 years old are being taught, hey, just because it's a fake prop, just because it's a prop and it's fake and it's a gun, doesn't mean you get to point it at anybody.
No.
And so that is
Yeah, that's, I mean, you're right. And that's all I mean, that really wraps up what I've wanted to say today. And, you know, I would say this, and then I'll throw it back to you. I would say, you know, make certain your gun's clean. Know your rights, adhere to the Second Amendment, and always stay close to God.
yeah, stay close to God. Don't trust the government. Buy gold, and watch Bluey. It's not that bad.
That sounds like The Jerk. You ever seen that movie?
Which one?
With Steve Martin. He's an all white kid raised in a black family. You've never seen it? And the advice they're giving him as he's walking out the door is, the Lord loves a working man, and don't trust Whitey.
Yeah, don't trust Whitey. All right, if Whitey is the government, then I stand by it. Don't trust. What's that one with with that fat comedian, the one who died? He overdosed. Golly, he gets on stage at a black concert and he says, "Kill Whitey."
Chris Farley. Chris Farley.
That's a good one. No. Don't kill Whitey, because I do love my White Devils, and I love all of you out there. Whether you're a Black Panther or a white supremacist,
Can we all just get along?
I love. Yeah,
Can we say that on YouTube?
Well, I don't care. I love everybody. Okay, I don't love Hitler though.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna put that out there, Kanye West. But jokes aside, jokes. These are all jokes. I do love everybody, and I do hope that everybody enjoyed this exchange and this episode of the podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. We love you. Invest in gold.